Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome back. I'm Olivia,
And I'm Amy,
and
and
this
this
is
is
Girls
Girls
Gone
Gone
Spooky.
Spooky.
Um, okay, so a couple things.
Yeah,
One, we have a mashup episode today of our theme, but
yes.
also a bunch of listener stories
Yay.
from a lot of different sources, email, Instagram, Facebook comments, etc. So we're going to run through some of those.
Mhm.
Um, and then get into our actual topic. But I said I was going to save this for the podcast.
Yeah.
When we got home from the Stanley Hotel to Amy's house, Dave was like, "You need to cleanse the house before you step foot in." We didn't.
Mhm. No.
And I was asking Amy, like, "Have you cleansed your house?" Because I don't know, like, I don't feel like scared. Like, I don't think it's like a bad vibe, but I just like kept having this like presence sensation that was
Mhm.
bothering me. And so I did like a spin through the house with Palo Santo, and I was like, I feel better now about it. But
Oh, good.
I was saying to Amy, like, I revisited the photos a lot to like show them to people and also just to like inspect them again.
Yeah.
And I'm literally like gazing at this photo of an apparition over and over again. And I sort of
Mhm.
wonder, like, I don't know, like if that has some sort of effect energetically or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it could if you're like still focused on it a lot
Yeah.
and inviting it to be
Yeah.
around.
And I kept saying, like, thinking to myself in my head, like, he's not here. He's attached to that location, which is
Yes.
true. But I just
Mhm.
was like, okay, I need to, like, keep telling myself this because I was starting to feel a little spooked.
Watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anywho,
Hmm.
if
Weird.
Paul was here, he's gone now.
Yes.
But
He's got
I just had to
maybe.
ask if you felt the need to cleanse.
Yeah, I haven't, but maybe I should, just in case. Because,
Why not? You know?
I mean, yeah, and Dave is like so scared of everything, so
Okay, well,
if.
don't tell him I said this.
No, I won't. He doesn't need to know.
He does not need to know.
Uh-huh.
Um, okay, well, we have a ton of listener stories. Should we start here?
Yes,
They're very
let's.
quick, just for everyone. So we're just gonna like rapid fire them
Yeah,
off.
yep, perfect. I'm going first?
Hmm.
Okay, so this is from an email from Chrissy, and they write, when my kids were little, we lived in Germany. I started having very vivid nightmares and even had some strange things happen, but I didn't pay much attention to them because I've been dealing with paranormal things throughout my life. One night, my then 4-year-old son wanted to sleep in my bedroom with me. I was still awake reading when he sat up and asked me why his sister was in the room. I told him she wasn't. She was down the hall in her bedroom. He looked at me and said, "No, she's not. She just came in and crawled under the bed." My mouth dropped open. I immediately went and checked on her, and she was fast asleep in her bed.
I feel like that one would have really creeped you out. Like if you were
Yes.
Chrissy, you'd be like,
Oh,
hell
I
no.
we'd be going to a
Burn the house
hotel.
down. Yeah, burn the
Yeah,
house down.
that's unacceptable.
So funny. Okay, so this next one is from Adam, and this was on Instagram, and this was in response to, I think, just actually like an Instagram story we had posted about the Hat Man, and I had asked him, "Have you seen Hat Man?" And he was like, "Yes, I have, but it wasn't scary per se because he was just kind of walking by and definitely didn't notice that I was even standing there. It seemed almost like he wasn't supposed to be there, but almost appeared almost as if he was on another timeline, although I'm not entirely sure how to explain that. I was around probably 11 or 12 at the time when I saw him, and I remember vividly that I stopped and waved my arms around thinking that it was my shadow, which is like such a
Oh,
cute like kid thing to do.
yeah.
Like, wait, what?
Is that me?
Is that me? But obviously it didn't move, and it was just a very black shadow with the top hat walking, and his arms were sort of moving at his sides, and then he walked through the wall and was gone. It was definitely sort of creepy, but it didn't feel negative. I was in my parents' basement at the time when it walked by me into the wall, but since I was in the basement, it literally walked into the foundation of the house, which would sort of be like underground. So it seemed to me like it didn't really know what time or place it was in, because I don't know why else it would walk into the wall, which would be going underground, almost like it was in another dimension or something. So I was like, ooh, okay, little like spooky story. And then he adds,
Yeah.
I've read that it's bad if you see the one with the sombrero. And I was like,
What
Adam,
does that mean?
what? A
Yeah.
sombrero hat man?
Yeah. Wow. What is that? Did you
I don't
Google it?
know. Yes, and I like didn't find much, but he was like, now I'm not
Okay.
like finding what I'm looking for. But he had like read a story like of someone's,
Oh,
I think, that had
interesting.
experienced it. But you know what I was thinking is like, yes, the top hat, there's the top hat thing, but like there's a certain kind of hat. I almost think it's called like a Panama hat, where it's a
Hmm.
wider brim and it
Yeah.
still has the kind of square um profile, but it's
Yes.
softer. Do you know what I'm talking
Uh-huh.
about? It looks
Yep.
like in between like a cowboy hat and a sombrero.
Yes.
And I
I can
wonder
picture
if
that.
that's what that person is talking about. Like, and
Hmm.
if other people confuse that for Hatman or if it's just all one and the same.
Right.
I don't know.
Interesting. Hmm.
I just thought
Yeah.
that was like so interesting. I was like, oh, okay, terrifying edition.
Yeah.
Thanks. Watch out for that. Got it.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully he'll write back if he ever finds
I know.
that.
I think he
Cause
probably will. So
okay.
hopefully he finds something about it because I'm very
Yeah.
curious.
Very interested.
Hmm.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, the next one is on Spotify, actually, where you can comment. Oh, did I just
Sorry.
delete that?
No, I did
It's
on
like, oh my
accident.
God.
Sorry.
Wait. Um, okay, so this is from somebody named Jane who commented on Spotify, which I think is really fun that you can comment on
Hmm.
there
I
now.
know, me too.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
So this was about our, or on our episode about, what was the theme? I mean, we were talking about that demon
Haunted
house in
houses, I
Indiana.
think.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. But she says Zach Bagans bought it, and this is the demon house of Indiana,
Hmm.
and had people investigate the house, and one gentleman ended up in the hospital with all of his organs shutting down, and a cameraman went ballistic. And Zach had stuff happen, and the police wouldn't go inside, so he decided to bulldoze it for the safety aspect. If he could have turned it into a museum, he would have. But I actually think he did the right thing, in my honest opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That one
agree.
cracked me up because I was just like, oh, we missed a lot of
A lot.
details, Jane.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we did. Yes. Thank you for writing that in, because organ failure?
Yeah, and we were so
That's.
baffled, remember, by like, why would
Mhm.
he bulldoze it? That's a very like, because the theory I think was like he didn't want anyone else to be able to go
Mhm.
in there, but it's like, no, if Zach Bacons can monetize, he's gonna monetize.
Yeah, we can count on
Um,
him.
so this is wild.
Yes.
And I'm guessing it would be the cameraman from Ghost Adventures, which is like
Yeah.
even wilder because so much crazy shit happens to those poor guys.
Yes. That's so true.
So
Yeah.
wild.
Wow.
So yeah, thanks, Jane.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so this next series, which will bring us to the end of our listener stories, are from people commenting on our episode about the like close encounters, like where you almost die and like a ghost saves you or a disembodied voice. These are people, so many people sharing their personal experiences with this. So we figured we'd share a few. So this first one is from Brad. He says, my wife would drive into the city for work, and on the way into the city, there's an area around a grain elevator where the deer gather to feed off the grain that's dropped during transfer. One day on the same route, at about the same time, she swears she heard her deceased mother's voice telling her to slow down. She reacted to the voice and let off the gas. Seconds later, a huge deer, which is how his wife described it, popped up out of the ditch directly in her path, but she was able to come to a complete stop because she had already slowed down,
Slow
and the
down.
deer pranced across the road in front of her. He says in a subsequent comment, my wife most definitely was what I call a seer. She had a real connection to the other side, and I was skeptical until the first time I awoke to her sitting on the edge of her bed, having edge of our bed, having a full-on conversation with her dad, and even had her arm in a position as if she were hugging his neck. So her arm
Oh,
was just like floating in space
around. Yeah.
around her
Hmm.
dad. Um, he says, I became a believer after that. And since her passing, I was like, oh, RIP.
Yeah.
I've been to 3 group readings with numerous other people and have had her come through all 3 times. I
Oh,
thought that was so
that's
special.
nice. Yeah. She's
It's
still
very sweet.
around.
Especially at a group
Yes.
reading to like get called out.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. It's very
Yep.
sweet.
Wow. I love that one. Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Okay. Another one from the same thread is
Hmm.
from Charlene, and they wrote, I was in Spokane, Washington in 1980. I almost said 1890. We'd have a ghost situation on our hands.
Or someone like the oldest person alive
Yeah.
by a lot.
um, yes. I was driving down from the, I assume, British Columbia border after a trip north. I was alone in the car. I heard a voice from the back seat say, You will have cancer. I was shocked. It repeated, You will have cancer. It was around 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I was wide awake. I wasn't hallucinating or any such other thing. I really heard this voice, a male voice, in a matter-of-fact tone. I finally was able to pull over and check the car out fully. There was no one else in it, just me. I was dumbfounded. I was 24 years old. The following year, at 25, I was diagnosed with cancer after never having been sick a day in my life up to that point. And at 25, that's so
I
young.
know.
That was now 45 years ago, and I have now had cancer on 5 separate occasions. I have beat it every time. I've been lucky, very lucky, but that voice still haunts me. Where did it come from, and how did it know?
It gives me such chills.
Yes, me too. And I'm so glad that you're still here.
I know.
Five
I know.
times,
I
that's
know.
a lot. Very
Yeah.
strong.
We're very grateful that you are here with us, Charlene, and not on the
Yes.
other side.
Yes.
Yeah, but like, where did that voice come from? And how did
Right.
it know? That's
Right.
so weird. And it's not like, oh, she confused a memory for a dream. Like she's like, no, I was in Spokane, Washington in
Mm-hmm.
1980 crossing the BC border. Like
Right.
just like remembers specifically where she was.
Yes. All
I don't
the
know, it's just
details.
so weird.
It is weird. Wow.
Okay, so
Amazing.
this, I know, amazing. So this next one is for, I'm not sure if it's Laureen or Lorianne. Um, but they say, I heard an audible voice in my Chrysler van that simply said, accident ahead, 12 minutes before an accident. My 15-year-old daughter was in the passenger seat, but I knew that it wasn't her voice. It was December 22nd, and there was a bare, dry highway with no vehicles behind me, none in front of me. So I asked my daughter to watch for wildlife as it was almost 6 p.m., 5:48. And she
Wow.
remembers the times, like really
Specific.
specifically.
Yeah.
And then 8 minutes later, I could see a vehicle ahead on this long straight stretch. And as I'm getting closer, he crosses the center line and hits 2 vehicles coming towards us. The first vehicle he hits starts crossing the center line and coming towards us as I was braking to stop. And then, just as he was 15 to 20 yards in front of me, this Bronco did a 90-degree turn and went down a ditch embankment. I got out of my vehicle to go help when the Dakota is now coming down the center line towards us again. I hopped back in my vehicle and backed up, but instead, the Dakota hit the second vehicle in the center driver's side that had been traveling behind the Bronco and had now come to a stop and was angle parked on the side of the highway. So there are a lot of cars involved all of
Yeah.
a sudden after there just
Mm-hmm.
being no one on the road.
Right.
The hit caused the Dakota to spin around again in the center of the highway before coming to a stop on the center line. The man in the Bronco was later sitting in my vehicle as we tried to keep warm in negative 21 degrees Celsius temperature, and
Oh.
I thanked him for avoiding hitting me. He said, I didn't avoid you, I simply had no steering. When the Bronco was pulled out of the ditch, there was no rubber on the front wheel that was bent and very twisted. The driver's mirror went right through his window and was sitting on his passenger seat, but he wasn't injured. Of the 5 people in the gold van that was hit, the mother, who was the driver, and the 10-year-old girl in the seat behind her were killed. The 15-year-old in the front passenger seat was badly injured and still in a wheelchair 16 months later when I went to court to testify. I was the sole witness at court. The 2 boys in the back seat in center and passenger side were traumatized but released from the hospital the next day. I was the only vehicle not hit and uninvolved, safe because of that voice.
Wow.
That's so
Those
weird.
are, yeah, amazing stories.
And it also seemed like somehow whatever force intervened to protect her and her daughter also helped the guy in the Bronco. Because the fact,
Yeah,
like, he's like, I didn't avoid you. I
right.
didn't have control of the car.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
really eerie.
Yes. Very. Wow. Another good
Yeah,
one.
I know.
Oh, okay. Rapid fire.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from Kayreen. And they wrote, I remember my mom telling me that one morning my dad went off to work around 6 a.m. and all she remembered was the bed being shook very hard, waking her up. She went downstairs, excuse me, and the stove that heated the house, don't remember what source was used for heating, and the pipes had separated and sent smoke everywhere. She banged on the walls to the landlord next door, and he came in and took care of things. My mom said she was sure it was her deceased father who was shaking the bed. I always say there's guardian angels around and let us know if there's danger around. Yeah, he woke her up.
Weird. Yeah, it's just
Mhm.
weird things. God.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, this next one is from Marlene. And they say, I had something similar happen when I was learning to drive, maybe around 18 years old. I was driving with my dad, and we were approaching a blind bend in the highway. I heard a voice say, stop. And so I looked at my dad and said, what? And he said, I didn't say anything. Seconds later, I heard the voice again, louder, stop. Again, I looked at my dad, then heard the voice scream, stop. I hit the
Wow.
brakes just as a car cut in front of me while turning onto a side road. If I hadn't braked, I would have hit them broadside. My dad just looked at me and said, how did you know? And I said, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. That was 45 years ago, and I remember it like it just happened yesterday.
Wow.
Weird to have a witness, too, like an adult witness
Mm-hmm.
who's like, how did you know to stop? Like that person came out of
Yes.
literally nowhere.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very weird.
Amazing. These are actually reminding me something that I have remembered for many
Oh,
years that I read in 17 magazine, like who knows how long ago. And it was a story like this where a girl heard something saying, like, put your feet off the
oh, the
dashboard.
dash. I think I've read
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah. And it was also, she was like filing her nails or something and
Yes.
had her feet up. And she was like, you need to put that down and get your feet
Yeah.
off. And then they got in a car accident where she would have like smushed her legs if they
Pancaked.
were.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I like have read because I got all these like targeted like reels about like horror stories from the ER where like women with these claw clips get into accidents and they're like
Hmm.
embedded in their skull. So
Yeah.
now every time I get in the car, I'm like, no claw clip,
Nope.
check. Um,
Take it out.
but
Good.
I then went down a rabbit hole of like, what happens if your feet are on the dash?
Hmm.
Not
Not
good.
good.
Really not
Nothing
good.
good.
Nothing
Yeah.
good. Like you're never gonna walk again. Not good.
Hmm.
If
Yeah.
you survive. Like
Right.
so so it's
Yeah.
like I remember when I was a kid, my mom would be like, get your feet off the dashboard. And I'd be like, I'm not wearing shoes. Like I'm not putting a mark. She's like, it's not about a
Yeah.
mark.
Yeah.
Like it's so you don't snap in half. I'm like,
Right.
oh.
Yep.
At the time I
That's
thought it was dramatic, but now I get the
now we
point.
know.
Yeah, get her
Yes.
point now.
We get it now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild.
That's more important than a scuff on the dashboard.
Just a smidge.
Oh man. Okay. Here we have from Sue. Wait, am I in the right place?
Hmm.
Okay.
I'm following along.
Okay. I had a similar experience. I hadn't passed my driving test long. I was driving to my boyfriend's home 5 miles away. I went the quietest way as it was dark, raining, and I missed two busy roads. I was driving down a country lane shortcut with trees on either side. It was dark but quiet, and I had traveled that road many times with my boyfriend. I was going slow as it was a windy road, and I heard a male voice say, "Slow down." I was a bit freaked out, but carried on a bit more cautiously. And then again, I heard the same voice repeat, "Slow down," but more forceful. Puzzled, I slowed right down, literally crawling along this road. I knew there was a sharp left-hand bend coming up. Suddenly, I heard the same voice, only this time it was loud and urgent. I slammed on the brakes, thinking, WTF. As soon as I thought it, a black car came flying around the bend on my side of the road. It had no lights on, but luckily he swerved and missed my car. I was frozen, sat there for a few minutes, wondering how I managed to not get hurt, thanks to that voice. So glad I listened to it. Could have been a different story otherwise.
Isn't that weird?
Yes, could have been a
They're just
very
like,
different story
yeah, and they're just like
otherwise.
all the same story told like
Mm-hmm.
a little bit different. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like someone in the comments, like a couple people were like, oh, but that's third man syndrome. And it's like, but there's nothing in this person's environment that would
Mm-hmm.
lead your subconscious to believe there's an accident. Like,
Right. You're
there's nothing
not
to
like in,
see, there's nothing to hear, there's nothing, I don't know. I just,
yeah, and you're not like in survival mode, which I think is
no,
when third man syndrome tends to happen.
totally.
But
Yeah.
yeah, amazing.
Um, okay, I'm gonna skip ahead to this one.
Okay.
So this is from Michael, and Michael says, I have a cottage in Northern Ontario. Shout out Canada. I have a bunkie, which I think is like a bunk bed.
Oh,
And
cute.
it was my routine to pour a nightcap, in parentheses, he specifies, scotch, and
Oh.
retire to my bunkie, light candles, and enjoy the ambiance before going to sleep. I love your vibe, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, we have similar
Good
vibes.
vibes in this
Good vibes,
story.
really good
Yep.
vibes. One night, I had a little bit more to drink than was good for me, but still poured another dram and wavered out to the bunkie. Lit some candles in this cedar and pine lined wooden bunkie and passed out. Maybe it's a bunker, not a bunk bed. I
Yeah.
was thinking bunk bed. That doesn't make sense. It's like a cabin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so he passes out. He's like snoozing. He then hears his mom shouting at him. In parentheses, he says she had been dead for 9 years. Michael, wake up! And I jerk awake to find that a candlestick was ablaze and about to set
Oh.
the walls on fire. If she had not warned me, I would have been engulfed in smoke and flames within minutes. Interestingly, I think this is the best part of the whole story. The
Uh-huh.
two candlesticks that my mother had gifted me had inexplicably extinguished themselves.
Oh.
Isn't that weird?
That's, yeah. She was watching.
Yeah. I love it.
Wow.
I love it.
That's so lucky.
I know. So
Yeah.
lucky.
Especially, did he say, yeah, pine lined wooden?
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a bad situation.
Goes up real quick.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We have now from Julie. She says, I was about 11, excited to be going to a carnival with my friends in their dad's car. I was so excited that I said a prayer that God let me live long enough to enjoy the carnival. Our family was poor, no car, few outings. My friend's dad needed to focus on driving, so offered sixpence to whomever of us could stay quiet the longest. Being very self-disciplined, I knew I had this in the bag. I stayed quiet, hard for me as I'm a bit of a chatterbox. As we got closer to our destination, I was motivated to be silent. That sixpence had my name on it. We were passing through a small town with buildings all along both sides of the road when I felt compelled to shout out, "Stop!" My friend's father's reflexes were good, and he put on the brakes just as we were coming to a crossroads and as a car going at high speeds crossed in front of us. Even though I had not stayed quiet, my friend's dad gave me the sixpence.
Wild. I loved that. She's like, I had it in
Yeah.
the bag. And then she's
Yeah.
like, well, not if we
Yep.
die.
Yeah. Do anything for that sixpence.
Seriously. Okay, this is our last listener story for today. This is from Jennifer. And Jennifer wrote this in via a Facebook ad. So we're very excited to share this because it's a fantastic story. So she says, I was incarcerated for 16 months, and I've always been very sensitive to energy and spirits and things like that. So a few months into my sentence, a woman overdosed in her cell and died. And whenever I walked by the cell that she overdosed in, I would get goosebumps and just a weird energy. Why do I keep doing this?
Is it the champagne?
I haven't even taken a sip in like 5 minutes. Okay.
True.
I think I'm just dry. Wow. Sorry, guys.
It's
Okay.
winter.
Yeah, what the heck? Okay, a few months go by, and I get moved into the cell that this woman died in.
Oh dear.
And there was a new inmate in that cell already. So during my first night in that cell, we noticed a strand of hair hanging down from the vent. The vent. Why did I say that so weird? And it was moving despite there being no AC or heat. So they're like, it's kind of weird. So me and my cellmate are just kind of joking around, start asking random questions, and it would move when we would say something like, move the hair to the left if you are mad. So they're like taunting it a little.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That night before we go to sleep, I let my cellmate know that I tend to have night terrors that include sleep paralysis at times, and told her to just touch my arm or something, and that usually brings me out of it. Around 3 a.m. or so, of course, I woke up and I could not move. I could not talk, nothing. And I felt like I was being strangled by something. And I'm trying to look at my cellmate, who was sitting up on her bunk drawing something. And she finally grabbed my arm and said, let's get some sleep. When we woke up for breakfast, she told me she saw something sitting on my chest trying to choke me. She said she tried to draw what she saw and asked if I wanted to see the picture. I said yes, and she showed me. She drew to a T the woman who had overdosed in that cell.
Whoa.
The woman overdosed almost 6 months prior to my cellmate being booked into the jail. So there was no way she could have known who that person was or what she looked like. Immediately after breakfast, I request to change cells.
Yes.
Isn't
Oh my
that
gosh.
wild?
That is so
Jennifer,
scary.
hooey, girl. I feel like she's got more to tell. Jennifer, keep them coming. Keep them coming, sister.
Yeah.
And that goes for all y'all. DM us, email us at girlsgonespooky@gmail.com. Submit your stories via the forum on girlsgottenspooky.com. We want to hear them. We're here for it. So please send them. We're begging you.
Because, these were amazing. Thank you all.
Good.
For sending.
So good.
Amazing.
And now onto our proper theme for today, which is posh little spookies. Posh hauntings. Which is broad, but
very.
We're gonna go with it. We're talking like upscale things. We're talking vineyards. We're talking wedding venues.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. Breweries.
Yeah.
Originally we had like a haunted spa, which like I know someone has told me a story about a haunted spa. It might actually have been my sister-in-law. I need to follow up on that. But anyway, posh hauntings. We're like rolling up a lot of interesting ones today. But they're all good. So enjoy. Amy's first.
Yeah. Perfect. One of mine is very much not posh, but I'm going to include it anyway because it's fun. So,
let's do it.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good. We love an exception to the rule.
Yeah, I live to break rules, as you can tell. Okay, so the first one is actually pretty short, and I'm including it just because it was on our list, but I don't think it's maybe actually haunted, which
Oh,
is interesting.
interesting.
Um, or it is, and people are skeptical or wanting to keep the air of mystery around
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, it's the New Salem Brewing Company. They opened a few years ago on what's called the Fairfield Hills campus in Newtown, Connecticut. And it's so named because the property where it's located used to be a psychiatric hospital.
Yikes.
So it was built in 1930 by the state of Connecticut, and it remained in operation until 1995.
Mm.
Um, but at its peak in the late 60s, there were about 4,000 patients housed in the hospital. And as you can imagine, in the early days of the hospital, some of the treatments, so
Mm.
called, they performed were like just torture and
Not the
harmful.
best. Yeah.
Yeah, including hydrotherapy, electroshock therapy, and even frontal lobotomies.
Mm.
So it would make a lot of sense for this place to be haunted.
Yeah.
However,
How is it
I,
not?
right, I couldn't find any stories about
Mm.
it. And the like the one mention of it, because I think they had been asked and like they maybe had a Halloween thing.
Mm.
Um, but the staff
Ooh.
said something like, we can neither confirm nor deny. So it's like,
Interesting. Okay.
are you, yeah, just trying to keep the mystery alive, like I said,
Yeah.
or do you really not believe? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
just quick
New
mention.
Salem Brewing Company.
Yeah,
Safe. Safe from
yes.
ghosts.
Yeah, for now.
Possibly.
Yes, maybe. um, okay, then I have two wineries,
Mm.
so, or vineyards, and I'm gonna need help with this pronunciation
Mm.
because it's in France. So, Chateau de Vaux, Vaux, Vox,
Vote. Vote.
Vaux. Okay.
You were right.
Yeah, okay, I got it on the
You don't
first.
need my help.
I do. I But yeah, okay. Chateau de Vaux.
Chateau de
It's
Vox.
it's French is not intuitive to
Mm-mm.
me because it's
No.
so different from
From
Spanish,
Spanish. Yeah.
where you
I got you.
pronounce every letter.
Every letter. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like such a, like, whew. When I took a couple Spanish classes, I was like, oh, well, this is the
Yeah.
easy part. It's
Uh-huh.
the rest of it that's fucking hard.
Yes. It's a lot easier. But okay, Chateau de Vaux is a 17th century estate. It's located near the small village of Vaux in France. And the chateau and its vineyards date back to the 1600s and
Wow.
were once owned by noble families. Yeah, very old.
Very old.
The estate has always had a reputation for being very prosperous and beautiful, but as with many historic properties, it's also had some weird stuff go on. So, the first ghost that is most often seen or experienced
Mm.
is the ghost of the murdered owner, former owner of the
Oh.
vineyard. And he was the owner like way long ago,
Mm.
during the 17th century. So he was the former owner, he was a nobleman, and he was said to have been murdered by a rival on the property.
Mm.
So, since he was the owner of this vineyard, he was deeply protective of it, and he also is protective of it now after his death because he seems to have never left. And it's said that his ghost still walks around on the grounds, particularly in the vineyards themselves and also in the cellar where he spent much of his time
Mm.
working, presumably. Um, And workers and visitors have reported hearing his footsteps, feeling cold and eerie presence, other sounds, especially near the areas where the murder is purported to have taken place. So,
Wow.
somewhere on the property, there's someone hanging out around there.
Yeah. To live and die a vintner.
Yes, not a bad
Jesus.
place to hang out, I
No, but also like
assume.
murdered by a rival. It
Yeah,
sounds like a
I
novel.
know. I know, it does. I love it. Mm,
Very epic. An
yes.
epic way to go.
Yep. Then the next part of this same chateau is that they described it as the shadows like having a life of their own, which is so
Oh,
creepy sounding.
yeah.
um, so they describe distant voices, footsteps echoing in empty hallways, doors opening and closing on their own, but also just seeing shadows, like not figures necessarily, but shadows like passing on the wall or on the floors, and no
No.
one's there to produce the
Oh, come
shadows.
on. I don't like
So
that.
I know it's creepy, but yeah, and then the last one on this property that people talk about is the ghost of the former gardener slash groundskeeper. And it's kind of similar to the murdered owner, that he
Mm.
just is around, but he does appear as like a full body specter that
Wow.
people see, and then they're like, what's that old man doing in the in the garden,
That's
and
so
go over,
weird.
and he disappears.
Oh my
So
God. That
yeah.
reminded me of Cat, the apartment story, the like 1,000 part scary story.
I forgot about
You're like,
that.
we're gonna summarize
Yes.
these sections.
I did not know what I was
And the
getting us
gardener.
into. Yeah,
So
yeah.
funny. It was good though. I liked it.
It was good. Yes, it just took a commitment to
It,
get
yeah, it did
through
go on and on.
it. um, yeah, but that's Chateau de Vaux.
Mm.
So now we have a couple more. So the Beringer Vineyard, which is in
Oh,
Napa.
yeah.
Yeah, and I have sampled their product. It's
I think
delicious.
almost everyone has
Everyone.
sampled their product.
Yes.
For those of
um,
you who are not familiar with Behringer is like they I don't think they do, but this is the kind of winery that would supply like American Airlines with their mini
yeah.
bottles. It's that
Yes.
kind of wine, like mass
Yes.
distribution.
Yeah.
It's not that great, but it's
Uh-huh.
consistent. So,
Yes. You can count on it. It'd
yeah.
be like on the second shelf of your
Mhm.
grocery
Yeah.
store.
Yeah. So funny.
um,
Behringer.
yeah,
And it's haunted. Wow.
it
I
is.
think I like it even more now.
I know. Yeah, there were actually quite a few. The article that we had in our doc was behind a paywall, so I kind of had to
Mm,
go astray. But this was mentioned actually on another. I don't know if it's like a repeating podcast,
mm,
but it was on the Wine Enthusiast website, and
mm.
they just had a little
Oh, that's
recording
fun.
of the people talking. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So, Beringer Vineyards is one of the most famous and historic wineries in California, known not just for its wine, but also for its reputation as a haunted location.
Hmm.
So, the estate, founded in 1876, is the oldest continuously operating winery in Napa Valley, which is also interesting.
Mhm.
So, the vineyards were founded by Jacob Beringer and his brother Frederick, both of whom immigrated from Germany. And Jacob is said to be one of the most active spirits on the property.
Jacob
And
Marley.
Jacob.
Stupid.
And I guess people are pretty sure that it's him because he does appear as another full body apparition.
That's wild.
Um, yes. And also, unfortunately, his appearance is often accompanied by labored breathing and
Oh,
other
okay.
unsettling sounds. So,
Yeah, I feel like it must take a lot of power to like show up as like a full
appear.
ass apparition.
Yes. Yes. He must be strong, but
And just
it's
heavy
kind of
breathing on people.
scary.
Come on, Jake. Damn.
I know.
Chill out.
Yeah. just relax.
Yeah,
But
relax, man.
yeah. Then, so he's very commonly around, but then the other thing is they have their own lady in white, of course.
Always.
Yep. And she's most often seen in the Victorian section of the estate. It's actually really pretty if you look up pictures of it.
Oh.
And her identity is not known, but some people wonder if she might be the ghost of somebody who lived there at one time. Maybe she was a family member, or maybe she was having a love affair with somebody there.
Classic.
Yes. And her spirit still wanders the property. And people who have encountered her report feeling a strong sense of sadness or melancholy in her presence. So I think people maybe,
Sad boy.
yeah, and maybe people made up the idea that she was having some sort of like tragic love affair just because of the way that
her bad
she
vibes
makes people feel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No offense, sis. Bad vibes though.
yeah, sorry, gal, you are. It's not fun. So yeah, and those two are the main ones, but people also generally feel strange in the vineyards at night. So, like, if you're walking through the fields at night, it's often feels very strange. You feel like there are shadows all around, sounds of disembodied voices, cold spots, things like that. So,
Jesus.
just some energy.
Hard pass.
Yeah. Yep. No thanks. And then I have one last one that's a wedding venue, actually, but this is not posh, like, at all.
That's okay.
So, it's Big Nose Kate's Saloon in Tombstone, Arizona.
Big Nose Kate Saloon, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I hope she named it herself. She wasn't called Big Nose Kate by someone else. Oh no.
She sure didn't, unfortunately. And
Poor
actually,
girl.
it's weird that it's called that because she, like, maybe spent time there. Big Nose Kate is a real person. She
It's giving hag face.
Yes, it is. That's what I was thinking the whole time. Poor Big Nose. But she was a companion, maybe a wife of Doc Holliday. So very famous gambler, gunfighter, Wild West guy.
Interesting.
And so she had the same hobbies. Like, she was a gambler, potentially a lady of the night. And she hung around with him, and yes, they visited this place that at the time was actually a hotel and saloon, but she didn't, like, live there. I don't really know who named it that way, but anyway.
Big Nose Kate Saloon. I can't with that. That's so funny.
I know, poor Kate. But you can now get married there. And if you're
imagine
like
putting that on your wedding invite.
You know, welcome to Big Nose Kate's. But
oh my gosh.
It'd be fun if you were having, like, a themed wedding.
For sure.
But otherwise, I don't know.
Wild West wedding where you dress up like in those, like, saloon photos that we almost took in Estes Park.
Yep, perfect. That would be fun.
So funny.
But let's see. So now it's just a saloon / wedding venue. People say that locals and visitors often see specters around the saloon, usually cowboys. And on this website, they said soiled doves, which I had never heard as a term for a sex worker. A soiled dove. That's
what that means?
Yes.
Oh my god.
I don't know if I like it or hate it.
I think I hate it. I think I hate it.
Soiled dove. Yeah.
Soiled dove.
So, anyway. But staff at the saloon say that cameras, like their security cameras, are always malfunctioning. And sometimes when they review footage, they'll see figures or shadows passing through.
Weird.
Yep. lights turn on and off by themselves. Silverware gets like thrown or pushed off of tables when they
Jesus.
set them. And people often hear voices talking and singing at all hours. And in one really extreme case, a worker there said that she felt like cold and clammy hands grab her around
Oh.
the neck. And lastly, couples who have gotten married at the saloon have reported back saying that there have been figures in the background of their wedding photos that they didn't
Oh.
see there. Or, yeah, just creepy.
Oh, that's really
Um,
creepy. Getting your wedding photos back and being like, who's that?
Who is that? Yeah, it'd be like if the photo at the Stanley was like a wedding photo.
Yeah,
You
literally.
just suddenly see somebody. Yikes.
Oh, creepy.
Yeah, but just a little bit of backstory on potentially the most commonly experienced ghost
Mm.
on the property. He's actually the former handyman who used to live on the property, and his name was Swamper.
Call me nothing but that from now on.
Yeah.
I am Swamper and
Swamper.
nothing else.
I love it. Actually, it's a good name for a dog.
I'm a
Swamper.
posh swamper.
Yes. That sounds like a British term.
A posh. You're being a right posh swamper,
I can imagine that meaning something
right?
in
A
Britain.
right git.
Yeah. Okay, so Swamper, he lived in the basement, and despite like knowing a lot of people and having regulars come through the saloon, no one was ever allowed to go into his room.
Mm.
And when I first read that, I was like, oh, he must be a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
But he was actually just a treasure hunter, and he like dedicated himself to digging his own personal mine, believing that he might be able to mine his own silver just through the floors and walls of his room. So here's the even more surprising part, that he succeeded in digging a
What?
tunnel straight through to the silver mine that actually existed in Tombstone. And he made it. Like,
If
I
you can
don't
believe
know.
it, you can do it, posh swamper.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Yep. So
that
nobody
is
knew about.
astounding.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. But nobody knew about his tunnels until he died, so no one discovered them. But often people will hear like kind of loud screaming or things when they try to go into what was his space.
Yeah,
And so people speculate that maybe he's still around protecting whatever treasure he
guarding the
had,
treasure.
because no one
For
found
sure.
anything, but maybe he just has a really good hiding place
I
and it's
mean,
still there.
sounds like if someone's gonna have a good hiding place, it's gonna be him.
It's Swamper. Yeah.
It's
So
Swamper. That's fucking funny.
yeah, but Big Nose Kate's. You could
Big
get
Nose
married there.
Kate's. Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Ring those wedding bells, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. So, symphonies are very posh. So we're gonna talk for a moment about the curse of the ninth,
Yes.
which is a superstition. It's not a haunting, but I figured I'd just talk about it quickly because I came across like an Instagram reel about it and I was like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. And
Yeah.
also posh.
Uh-huh.
So it's a superstition connected with the history of classical music, and it is the belief that a ninth symphony is destined to be a composer's last, and that the composer will be fated to die during or after writing it, or before completing a tenth. So this superstition originated in the late Romantic period of classical music, and according to Arnold Schoenberg, the superstition began with Gustav Mahler, who, after writing his Eighth Symphony, wrote Das Lied van der Erde, which,
Perfect.
while structurally a symphony, was able to be disguised as a song cycle, each movement being a setting of a poem for a soloist and orchestra. And then he wrote his Ninth Symphony and thought he had beaten the curse, but died with his 10th Symphony incomplete. So he was trying to like cheat the superstition. He's like, well, the eighth wasn't like actually a symphony, but the curse of the
Didn't
ninth
work.
was like, we see right
Yeah.
through your tricks.
Uh-huh.
The superstition, however, was hatched by Mahler. Before him, Beethoven and Schubert had died before or while writing their 10th symphonies. And upon realizing this, Mahler created the Curse of the Ninth and led this superstition into popularity by seemingly proving it true, which is weird to
Yeah.
like create and then be victim of your own superstition.
Yeah.
It has
Interesting.
lost popularity in modern times, and while it is spoken about, any possible quote unquote proof of it has not happened recently, as it did in the era of Beethoven and Mahler. As Maddie Shaw Roberts writes, The Curse of the Nine is a great story, and it probably fueled a lot of the angst behind Mahler's heart-wrenching symphonies, but perhaps it's best to treat it as a superstition. However, the list of composers who were taken by the Curse of the Ninth is lengthy. Yeah. Now, it could be argued very easily that men of this time all tended to have around the same lifespan. And so by the time they got to the ninth, they were around the age where they weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
But Beethoven, Schubert, Mahler, Malcolm Arnold, Kurt Atterberg, Anton Bruckner, Antonin Dvorak, Niels Gade, Alexander Glazunov, David Maslanka, Vincent Persichetti, Inu Juhani Rautavaara, Alfred Schnittke, Roger Sessions, Ralph Vaughan Williams, and Boris Tkachenko.
Wow. Those were a lot of people and a lot of names.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Just listed. I'm sure there are more.
There's more.
But
yeah.
Wow. Very weird. It has taken off in pop culture a little bit. There's a British crime series called Midsummer Murders, and this aired in the 19th season of this crime series, which aired in 2018. And they talk about inside number 9, the Curse of the Ninth. So there's just a lot of weird lore around that. And that's the Curse of the Ninth. It's just like kind of compelling. Yeah. Like it's like, yeah, I mean, it's probably just a little superstition, but if you believe in superstition, that could make it real.
Yes.
I'm reading a book right now called Here One Moment, and I'm trying to think of who it's by. It's by someone I read before, Leanne Moriarty, the one who did Nine Perfect Strangers. Mm-hmm. And it's very good. I highly recommend it. The premise, which like is on the back of the book, so I'm not giving something away, is a woman gets on a plane and like mid-flight starts pointing at people and saying like, I expect 88 bladder cancer. And it's like she goes through the whole plane and predicts everyone's age and cause of death. And some of them are like, okay, like 103 like natural causes, and then some of them are like age 7 drowning, like crazy. And it's like little kids, like babies,
that you wouldn't guess.
Right, and people are like freaking out, but she doesn't remember the event, so she has some sort of like fit and doesn't remember doing it. And so it's, the book alternates the narration from like passengers on the plane and their lives before and after, and then her after. And she's like full of regret because her mother was a psychic, like a legit one. Yeah. And she was like, I don't have the gift, but even if I did, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't tell people that. So she feels awful. She's like racked with guilt. But she talks a lot. She's starting to talk. I'm like maybe a third to halfway through. She's starting to talk about how fate is such like a fickle thing. And her mother was like, you can't beat fate. Like you can't cheat fate. And she's always about that. Like you are predetermined to do this specific thing and for this to happen. And she's like, the problem is that once you know, you self-fulfill that
Mm-hmm.
eventuality. It
Yeah.
becomes something that happens
Yeah.
because you trip yourself into believing that it'll happen, or you do things to prevent it that actually bring it about
Yeah.
even more. Just
Right.
confirm that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just
That's
reminds me of
interesting.
that a little bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
that if you believe it to be true, doesn't that
Mm-hmm.
make it real? Like that's not
Mm-hmm.
true for like the earth being flat. Sorry, flat
Yeah.
earthers. Um
But
but
yeah,
you know,
things that you can accidentally bring into existence by
like all
believing
the
it.
yeah, all the
Yeah.
creepypasta stuff we've talked about,
Yes.
Momo and Slender Man
Yes.
and whatever,
Yes.
all of that. Like just
Yeah.
so
Yep.
wild.
Yeah.
So wild.
Ugh, I hate
So
Momo.
I
I
know, me
forgot about
too.
him until you
Awful.
said that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Awful.
No, that's okay.
Um, so we are moving on to wedding venues. So I have
Yeah.
two. There are more, but I chose two. So
Hmm.
the first is the Loretto Chapel in New Mexico. So I'm going to give you a little backstory first. So their actual website, lorettochapel.com, has an Our Story page. So it says, Our story begins in 1850 when the Vicariate, which vicar, yeah, vicariate,
I
is
don't know that word.
vicariate a word?
Let's look it up. Vicariate.
It seems like it
Yes,
should be like Latin. How's it pronounced? Vicariate?
I think so.
Vicariate is that was a choice that I made, not
Yeah,
knowing.
wait. But I am having trouble like interpreting this because it's, when they try to write out
Mm-hmm.
pronunciation, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
like with the dashes over the letters.
Yeah.
And there's like three options.
Vi
So
vicariate. I don't know.
I think
Whatever.
that sounds
Maybe
right.
maybe in Italian it is vicariate.
Vicariati. Yeah, that's probably
That was
right.
really good. That was really good. Okay, we're gonna say vicariate. That was
Uh-huh.
embarrassing. Taking it back.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
The Vicariate of New Mexico was established under the first bishop of the territory, Bishop Jean-Baptiste Lamy, seeing a need to educate the girls of the territory. Suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop Lamy sent a plea to Catholic teaching orders to open a school for girls. The Sisters of Loretto responded and sent 6 sisters to open the Loretto Academy. Having been recently under Mexican rule, the territory of New Mexico was full of Spanish-speaking citizens, so the 6 had to learn the Spanish language, and after an arduous trip during which the Mother Superior died, finally arrived in Santa Fe and opened their school in 1853. By 1873, so 20 years later, the sisters were able to start the construction of a chapel using the same French architect and builders as St. Francis Cathedral Basilica. The chapel of Our Lady of Light, as it was then known, was patterned after Archbishop Lamy's favorite Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. With its Gothic style architecture, the chapel certainly would have stood out among the small adobe homes surrounding it at the time. Unfortunately, the architect died before access to the choir loft was built. Given the height of the loft and the small size of the chapel, a staircase would have taken up too much floor space, thereby reducing the seating capacity to an unacceptably small level. Legend states that seeking guidance and help, the Sisters of Loretto prayed a 9-day novena to Saint Joseph, patron saint of carpenters. A novena is a special prayer said for 9 consecutive days. On the final day of the novena, a carpenter appeared with only a hammer and a carpenter's square, and he built what is now known as the miraculous staircase with simple tools and wooden pegs. The rare wood used is not native to the American Southwest, and when the staircase was complete, it is said that the carpenter disappeared without receiving thanks or payment. The sisters tried all local lumber stores, but could not find accounts open for the supplies for their stairs. Some believe the carpenter was Saint Joseph himself, while others believe that it was someone sent by Saint Joseph. What is known is that the Sisters of Loretto prayed, and their prayers were answered. So here's what's weird. In addition to the carpenter, is the structure and the physics even of the staircase. So The staircase has 2 complete 360-degree turns with no center pole for structural support.
Whoa.
How?
How do
Like,
you do that?
yeah. The entire weight of the staircase rests on the bottom stair.
Whoa. Is
Yeah.
that safe?
I don't know, including the weight of anybody standing on it. So
Yeah.
the banisters were added approximately 10 years later due to the difficulty of climbing the tall taper stairs with no railing. So they have like very pretty kind of elaborate railings now, but it used to just be simple. It looks like the bottom is like smooth going up and around, and then it's just like plain wooden steps. Um,
Wow.
2 small brackets can be seen on the outside, connecting the stairs to the wall and a pillar that are nearby to provide more support and to protect the staircase from negative effects due to vibrations from passing cars and trucks. But those weren't always there. And actually, unfortunately, rather than helping the structural integrity of the staircase, these later added brackets damaged the sides of it by preventing the natural spring-like movement of the staircase while in use. So it had kind of it would literally
The
like,
bounce.
yeah, bounce a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the underside of the stairs were originally open, but it was filled in with a horsehair and lime mixture painted to look like wood. So
Wow.
weird. Like, so
That's.
incredibly weird. So the
Mm-hmm.
nuns all think it could have been Saint Joseph himself, but it's just very, very baffling. It's now a museum and an event space, including a wedding venue. It The stairs are 20 feet high, and were built in 1878. This was huge in pop culture. So, and there are other staircases like it, but there are very few. There's like one in Germany, I think, and one somewhere else, but like no one can really explain the physics of it. Like it shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
work, but it
Yeah.
does.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah. So the story of the Loretta Chapel staircase was the subject of a 1998 TV film called The Staircase.
Mm.
It was also the setting of records research in a Dark Winds episode called Hoog Handy. It was in an Unsolved Mysteries episode called Miracle Staircase. An author named Anne Rinaldi wrote a book called The Staircase on it. And then there was a TV show called Unexplained Investigated, the Spiral Staircase episode of Mysterious Structures. So
Mm.
just really weird.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, Very weird. There is a haunting beyond the stairs, which like kind of makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like it's old,
Yeah.
there were nuns living there. There's obviously something like a little bit supernatural already going on. So the Loretto Chapel is said to be haunted by a nun who used to work at the school. She had a penchant for cigars and has been seen
Oh,
smoking around the chapel, which I'm like, get it.
good for her. Yep.
Yeah, she also favors the gift shop and sometimes slips extra money in the register. She's called
Oh.
the smoking nun. She also loves to talk to children, which she did when she was actively teaching, of course. She loved kids. And a family at Loretto Chapel experienced this when their young daughter suddenly left to, quote, talk to the woman in black in the
Oh,
corner.
I
So she
love
was in
that.
her habit and everything.
Amazing.
So that's Loretto Chapel. And then I have one more. And this is a story that was actually shared on another podcast that we've talked about a few times, Rattled and Shook. And this is the first story on the Very Meredith and April Christmas. And it's quick. So this is a story told by someone who bought a wedding venue, who actually had worked at the wedding venue prior to buying it. So she and her sister buy it. And people had always talked even when they were employed there about like doors open and close on their own, or you hear people talking, but there's no one there. Just like eerie stuff. But they were like, hee hee hee. Like everyone is just kind of like is lighthearted about it. It's not like, oh, there's a heavy presence. It's very lighthearted.
Right.
So once she and her sister actually bought the venue, then they actually started experiencing these things a little bit more themselves. And around the same time, this owner bought a Tesla, which, if you're not familiar with this, Teslas have the big ass like iPad style screen in the driver's seat, like the cockpit essentially, where it will actually show you your car like from above, and then it'll show you other cars or vehicles and people, cyclists, motorcycle riders, like people around you. And it's really quite accurate according to this woman. So it's like shows even like the position people are standing in. It can tell different kinds of vehicles apart, like a pickup truck versus someone towing something on the back of their car, like pretty accurate. So behind the venue, there's an alley behind the venue where there's parking for the employees. And it was kind of late at night. The car showed someone standing beside the car. And she's like, that's weird, but there's bad lighting in the alley. So she's like, I don't know, maybe something with that. But she like goes and looks and there's no one there. She's like, okay. After that, she's like more aware of it. She's like, okay, I'm gonna like, I feel like it's the car. Like she assumes it's the car. Like the car's just wrong. Like it's
Yeah.
detecting something and misconstruing it as something else. So she keeps checking it, nothing. A few weeks go by. Another evening, she's leaving late. And again, it shows a person, but this time they're standing right behind the car. And of course, when she looks through the back window, there's no one standing there. So she engages the rear camera view and still can't see anyone. But the screen is still showing a person there. Like she's looking, there's no one there. Then she's looking on the screen, there's still that person there. She's like, that's so weird. So she's like, okay, like I'm gonna go home. So she starts like backing up, even though the screen is saying, no, there's someone back there. And she's like, okay. She's like going really slow. And she looks down at the screen as she like reverses and starts pulling out, and she sees someone walking beside the car as she's slowly exiting the alley.
No.
Weird. So
Very weird.
yeah, she kind of jokes about it with her sister, and then a couple weeks later it happens again. But this time the person is standing in front of the vehicle. So she tries to take a photo of both the driving display and the windshield through which you can't see anyone. There's no one standing there. And the moment she hits the capture button, the figure on the screen disappears. And she says that's never happened before. Like if there's someone actually standing there, they would never just like blink out of existence on the screen. She's like, that's so weird. So of course she takes to the internet and she's like, is this like, she's like, I don't want to ask a leading question. Like, does the Tesla show ghosts? So she starts typing into Google, like, does Tesla to say detect, and she was going to say things that aren't there. And the first autofill is does Tesla detect ghosts? She goes down a rabbit hole on YouTube where you find hundreds of videos of people driving through cemeteries and seeing a fuck ton of people walking around who aren't there.
Yeah. That's bizarre. Yeah. How is it picking them up?
I don't know. It's so
really
creepy.
Interesting.
It's so creepy. So yeah, they have a couple come to the what's it called? The venue, like a couple to be married. And they hear something in the place, and she's like telling them about her experience, and this couple's like, that's fucking scary. Like, you're saying this like it's no big deal. That's really scary.
Yeah. There's and they hear, no other way to put it.
Yeah. And they hear like a cart roll across some other area of the venue where like no one else is working. And they were like, we're going to get out of here.
Yeah.
So anyway, not super posh when you're haunted, but
no,
still posh.
It's, still posh, still spooky, still interesting.
Spooky always. Wow. Yes. Long episode with our listener stories, but worth it.
Was it? I lost track.
113, baby. Well, maybe less because after editing, but still.
Yes. Yeah, still. Well, one last thing. So sorry. I just have one recommendation that I was thinking while you talked about the chapel.
Mm-hmm.
The movie Conclave was
it good?
Excellent. Yes.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it yet.
Highly recommend.
Oh, okay. I need to get on that.
Come to us for recommendations, but
we've gotten a couple DMs saying, I really liked that movie. Thanks for the rec. So you never know.
Well, yeah, it's a great movie. And twists and turns I never would have expected. So
wow. Oh, okay. Hyping it up. Okay, I will.
Hmm.
Shit. All right, y'all. Well, I already did our call to action for stories, so please rate and review the pod. Tell your friends about it. We'll see you next week. And until then, stay
Stay
spooky.
spooky. Bye.
Bye.